You must begin to understand something very subtle, yet very powerful. Your feeling is the secret. Not your effort, not your struggle, not how hard you try, but the quiet inner knowing of being. That is where everything begins. Most people attempt to change their life by rearranging the outside world. They chase, they push, they force outcomes. And yet the more they strain, the more distant their desires seem. Why? Because the outer world is only a mirror. It reflects without judgment the state you occupy within. So if you wish to change anything, your circumstances, your relationships, your success, you must not start with action. You must start with feeling. Feel it real, not as a wish, not as a distant hope, but as a present fact. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the thing you desire already fulfilled. Not it will happen, but it has happened. There is a difference, and that difference is everything. One keeps it in the future, the other brings it into the now. When you feel it as real, your body begins to respond. Your mind quiets. There is a sense of naturalness, almost like relief. That is the state you are seeking. Not excitement, not desperation, but certainty. You are not trying to get something. You are remembering what is already yours. This is where many go wrong. They imagine once, maybe twice, and then they look to the world for confirmation. When it doesn't appear immediately, doubt creeps in. But understand this, the outer world moves according to the inner conviction, not the other way around. You must persist in the feeling, not forcefully, not mechanically, but gently returning to it throughout your day. When doubt appears, do not fight it. Simply replace it. Return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. If you desire success, feel successful now. Walk as one who already is. Think from that state, not of it. If you desire love, feel loved now. Not by seeking it, but by embodying the completeness of already having it. This is not pretending, this is creation. The moment you occupy a state fully, life begins to rearrange itself to reflect it. Opportunities appear, ideas come, people respond differently. It feels almost effortless, not because nothing is happening, but because everything is aligning. You are not controlling the world, you are selecting the state, and the world follows. Do not concern yourself with how it will happen. The how is not your responsibility. The moment you try to figure it out, you step out of the state and back into limitation. Your only role is to feel it real and remain faithful to that feeling. There will be moments where reality seems to contradict your inner assumption. Ignore them. They are echoes of past states, not indicators of your future. Stay loyal to your vision, because what you persist in feeling eventually hardens into fact. And when it does, it will feel natural. So natural that you may even forget there was a time you didn't have it. That is the quiet power of this method. No force, no struggle, just the disciplined use of imagination and feeling. You are always manifesting, whether you realize it or not. The question is not if, but what. So choose deliberately, feel deliberately, live inwardly as the person you wish to be, and the world will have no choice but to reflect it. To feel it real is to step beyond imagination as a fleeting act and enter it as a lived experience within your own consciousness. Most people treat imagination like a daydream, something soft, distant, and optional. But this is where the misunderstanding begins. Imagination, when joined with feeling, is not fantasy. It is the beginning of creation itself. You are not asked to force belief. You are invited to experience reality inwardly before it appears outwardly. That is the shift. When you feel something as real, your entire inner world reorganizes around that assumption. Your thoughts begin to align, your reactions change, and even your sense of identity subtly transforms. It is no longer about hoping something will come to you, but about recognizing that, in a deeper sense, it already has. Think of a moment in your life that felt undeniably real, something that required no convincing. Perhaps a memory where you were completely present. The emotions were natural, the experience was vivid, and there was no separation between you and the moment. That is the quality of feeling you are aiming to recreate. Not intensity, but naturalness. Not effort, but acceptance. When you imagine your desire fulfilled, do not stand outside of it as an observer. Step into it as the one experiencing it. See through your own eyes, not as if you are watching a scene, but as if you are living it now. Hear the sounds, sense the environment, and most importantly, feel the emotional certainty that it is done. This feeling is the bridge between the unseen and the seen. At first, your mind may resist. It may remind you of your current circumstances, pointing out all the reasons why your desire is not yet real. But understand that these objections are simply reflections of past conditioning. They have no authority unless you give it to them. You are not trying to erase reality, you are choosing a new one internally. The more you return to this feeling, the more familiar it becomes. What once felt like imagination begins to feel like memory. And when it feels like memory, it carries a weight of truth that no external condition can easily shake. This is the turning point. You are no longer practicing, you are embodying. It is important to realize that feeling it real does not mean constant emotional highs. In fact, the truest sign that you have succeeded is a quiet sense of normalcy. It feels ordinary, almost obvious, as though things could not be any other way. There is no urgency, no grasping, because there is nothing to chase. You are already there, inwardly. From this state, your actions become effortless extensions of your identity. You do not force yourself to behave differently. You naturally respond as someone who already has what they desire. This subtle shift influences every interaction, every decision, and every opportunity that comes your way. Even when the outer world appears unchanged, something within you knows that movement has already begun. You are no longer reacting to life, you are directing it from within. And this direction is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, steady, and deeply certain. So return to the feeling again and again, not as a task, but as a choice. Each time you do, you are reinforcing a new state of being. And as that state becomes dominant, the outer world must in time reflect it. The moment you stop chasing is the moment everything begins to move toward you. Chasing implies separation. It quietly affirms that what you want is outside of you, distant and difficult to reach. And as long as you remain in that state, you continue to experience more distance, more effort, and more delay. This is why so many people feel stuck, not because their desires are impossible, but because they are approaching them from the wrong state of being. To start becoming is to shift your identity. It is not about what you do, it is about who you are. Every action you take flows naturally from the person you believe yourself to be. If you see yourself as someone who is still trying, still striving, still waiting, then your actions will reflect that struggle. But if you begin to see yourself as someone who already embodies the result, everything changes quietly but profoundly. You do not become by force. You do not become by repeating empty words or pretending without feeling. You become by accepting a new inner truth so fully that it feels natural to you. This acceptance is not loud or dramatic. It is subtle. It is a quiet decision within yourself that says, "This is who I am now." When you adopt this state, you are no longer looking outward for permission or validation. You are not asking the world if you are worthy, successful, loved, or capable. You have already answered that question within yourself. And because you have answered it internally, the outer world begins to reflect that answer back to you in ways that feel almost effortless. Consider how a person who is confident does not chase approval. They do not beg to be seen or recognized. They move through life with a quiet assurance, and as a result, others respond to them differently. That response is not something they forced, it is something they evoked by being who they are. In the same way, when you become the version of yourself who already has what you desire, you stop seeking and start attracting. This does not mean you will do nothing. Action will still occur, but it will feel different. It will no longer come from pressure or lack. It will arise naturally, almost instinctively, as the right thing to do in the moment. You will find yourself making decisions with clarity instead of hesitation, speaking with confidence instead of doubt, and moving forward without the constant need to check if you are on the right path. There is also a release that happens when you stop chasing. You let go of the need to control every detail. You are no longer trying to force outcomes or manipulate circumstances. Instead, you trust that your inner state is enough. This trust creates space for opportunities to appear, for connections to form, and for life to organize itself in ways you could not have predicted. At times, the old habit of chasing may return. You may feel the urge to check, to worry, or to push. When this happens, do not judge yourself. Simply become aware of it and gently return to your chosen state. Remind yourself that you are not the one who is trying to get something. You are the one who already is. Becoming is not a one-time act. It is a continuous alignment. Each moment offers you a choice, to fall back into the old identity of lack or to remain in the new identity of fulfillment. The more you choose the latter, the more stable it becomes, until it feels like your natural way of being. And when it becomes natural, the need to chase disappears completely. Not because you have given up, but because there is nothing left to pursue. You have already stepped into the version of yourself who has it. And from that place, life begins to meet you where you stand. Living from the end is a complete reversal of how most people have been taught to think. The mind is conditioned to move forward step by step, always looking at where it is and trying to calculate how to get to where it wants to be. It measures progress, evaluates time, and constantly asks, "How far am I from it?" But this very question keeps the desire at a distance. To live from the end is to remove that distance entirely. It means you do not wake up as someone trying to achieve something. You wake up as someone who already is what they once desired to be. There is no gap to close, no path to figure out, no timeline to manage. The end is not a destination you are walking toward. It is a state you step into now. When you think toward something, you are always aware that you do not yet have it. Your thoughts carry effort, anticipation, and often doubt. But when you think from the end, your thoughts change in tone. They become natural, relaxed, and certain, because they are coming from fulfillment rather than longing. Imagine the difference between saying, "I hope this works out," and "I'm so glad it worked out." One is filled with uncertainty, the other with quiet completion. That shift, though subtle, changes your entire inner experience. And it is this inner experience that shapes what unfolds externally. Living from the end is not about denying your current circumstances. It is about refusing to let them define your identity. You may see things around you that do not yet reflect your desire, but you no longer give them authority. Instead, you remain anchored in the inner knowing that your desired reality is already established within you. This requires a kind of mental discipline, not force but consistency. Your mind may drift back into thinking toward the goal, especially when faced with delays or challenges. In those moments, gently bring yourself back. Ask, "If it were already done, how would I feel right now? How would I think? How would I respond?" Then allow yourself to enter that state again. Over time, this becomes less of an exercise and more of a habit. You begin to notice that your reactions change. Situations that once triggered doubt or frustration no longer have the same effect, because you are no longer interpreting them from a place of lack. You are seeing everything through the lens of completion. There is also a deep sense of calm that comes with living from the end. The urgency fades. The need to constantly check for results disappears. You are no longer waiting, because in your inner world there is nothing to wait for. This calm is not passivity, it is confidence. From this state, your actions align naturally. You are not forcing yourself to behave like the person who has achieved the goal. You simply are that person. Decisions feel clearer, timing feels intuitive, and there is a sense that you are being guided without needing to overthink every step. It is important to understand that living from the end does not mean everything will instantly look different on the outside. There may still be a period where the external world reflects your previous assumptions. But you no longer react to that reflection as if it is final. You see it for what it is, an echo that is fading. As you remain faithful to the end, that inner state begins to solidify. It becomes more real to you than anything you can see. And when that happens, the outer world has no choice but to conform. Not because you forced it, but because you sustained a state that could only express itself in one way. So instead of asking how to get there, you simply decide that you already are there. And from that moment on, everything you think, feel, and do begins to flow from that decision. The inner world is not a passive space where thoughts randomly appear and disappear without meaning. It is the very foundation from which everything you experience is formed. What you consistently feel, assume, and accept as true within yourself becomes the pattern that life reflects back to you. Whether you are aware of it or not, you are always occupying a state, and that state is shaping the outer world in quiet, precise ways. Most people place all their attention on appearances. They judge reality based on what they can see, hear, and touch, believing that these external conditions are fixed and independent. But what they fail to realize is that these conditions are not causes, they are effects. They are the result of previous inner assumptions that have taken form over time. When you understand this, you stop reacting to the world as though it has power over you. Instead, you begin to observe it differently. You see it as feedback, as a reflection of where you have been dwelling internally. This does not mean blaming yourself for everything that happens, but it does mean recognizing your role as the one who selects and sustains states of being. Your inner conversations are especially important. The way you speak to yourself, the silent narratives you repeat, and the meanings you assign to situations all contribute to the reality you experience. If your inner dialogue is filled with doubt, fear, or limitation, then those qualities will eventually appear in your outer life in some form. Not because the world is against you, but because it is faithfully mirroring what you have accepted within. To change the outer world, you do not fight it directly. You do not try to manipulate every circumstance or control every outcome. That approach only reinforces the idea that the power lies outside of you. Instead, you return to the source, the inner world, and begin to shift your state there. This shift is subtle but powerful. You choose new assumptions. You begin to entertain thoughts that align with the reality you prefer. You feel into a version of yourself that already embodies what you desire. And as you do this consistently, something begins to change. Not all at once, and not always in obvious ways, but steadily. At first you may notice small differences. Your reactions become calmer, your perspective broadens, and situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable. This is a sign that your inner state is changing, and as it stabilizes, the outer world starts to reorganize itself to match it. People may respond to you differently. Opportunities may appear where there were none before. Circumstances may shift in ways that seem coincidental, but are actually the natural result of your new state. It can feel surprising, even mysterious, but it is simply the law of reflection at work. There may be moments when the outer world seems unchanged or even contradictory. In those moments, it is important not to lose your awareness. What you are seeing is not a denial of your new state, but a continuation of old patterns that have not yet fully dissolved. If you react to them as final, you reinforce them. If you remain grounded in your new inner reality, they begin to fade. The key is consistency, not perfection. You do not need to control every thought, but you do need to be aware of the state you return to most often. That dominant state is what shapes your experience. So when you notice yourself slipping into old patterns, gently guide yourself back. Not with frustration, but with understanding. As your inner world becomes more aligned with what you desire, it begins to feel more real than anything outside of you. This is when the shift becomes undeniable. You are no longer trying to change your life, you are expressing a new version of yourself. And that expression naturally takes form in the world around you. Everything you see is a reflection, not a source. And once you truly grasp that, you stop chasing change outside and begin creating it within. Persistence in feeling is where most people either transform their lives or quietly return to old patterns. It is not that they do not understand the idea or that they lack imagination, but that they underestimate the importance of remaining faithful to a chosen state. They touch the feeling once, maybe twice, and then they abandon it the moment the outer world fails to immediately confirm it. But the outer world does not respond to brief moments. It responds to what you consistently occupy. To persist in feeling does not mean forcing yourself into emotional intensity all day long. It means gently, steadily returning to the inner knowing of your wish fulfilled, no matter what appears. It is a quiet loyalty to a state you have chosen, even when there is no external evidence yet to support it. At first, this may feel unnatural. Your senses will try to pull you back into old ways of thinking. You may notice doubts arising, questions forming, and a subtle urge to check whether anything has changed. This is the habitual mind seeking reassurance from the outside. But persistence requires that you no longer depend on that reassurance. Instead, you become the source of certainty within yourself. Each time you return to the feeling, you strengthen it. It becomes more familiar, more stable, more natural. What once felt like an effort begins to feel like your default way of being. And as it becomes your dominant state, it starts to influence everything else. Your thoughts, your reactions, your expectations. You are not trying to hold the feeling perfectly. That is neither realistic nor necessary. What matters is where you return. Even if you drift into doubt or distraction, you can always come back. That return is the act of persistence. It is not about never falling out of the state, but about how quickly and how willingly you re-enter it. There is also a certain patience involved, but it is not the kind of patience that waits anxiously. It is the patience of someone who already knows. When you truly feel something as real, you do not constantly question it. You do not wake up every day wondering if it is still true. You simply live from it. That is the quality of persistence you are cultivating, a calm, steady assurance that does not need to be proven. During this process, you may encounter moments where the outer world seems to contradict your inner state. Things may appear delayed, unchanged, or even moving in the opposite direction. These moments can test your persistence. They invite you to either return to old assumptions or remain faithful to the new one. If you react with frustration or doubt, you temporarily shift back into the old state. But if you pause and return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you reaffirm your chosen reality. Over time, this becomes easier. You begin to trust the process, not because you have seen constant evidence, but because you have experienced the stability of your own inner state. Persistence also reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying to manifest something and begin to recognize yourself as someone who simply is. The desire is no longer separate from you. It becomes part of your sense of self. And when that happens, there is nothing left to chase or prove. It is important to remember that the outer world reflects the dominant feeling, not occasional effort. So even if you imagine vividly once, but spend the rest of your time in doubt, the doubt becomes the stronger signal. Persistence ensures that the desired state becomes the one you occupy most often. As this state solidifies, something shifts quietly but unmistakably. The need to keep checking fades. The urge to force outcomes disappears. You feel more at ease, more certain, and more grounded. And from that place, the outer world begins to align, not because you demanded it, but because you sustained a state that could only express itself in one way. So you continue, not with strain, but with quiet consistency. You return to the feeling again and again until it feels like home. And once it feels like home, it no longer feels like something you are doing. It feels like who you are. To become the person who already has it is to move beyond desire as something separate from you and allow it to become part of your identity. Most people live in a state of wanting. They define themselves by what they lack, by what they are trying to achieve, by what is still missing. And without realizing it, they carry that sense of incompleteness into every thought, every action, and every decision. This is why the desire remains just out of reach. It is being pursued from the wrong version of self. You do not receive what you want. You express what you are. So the question is no longer, how do I get this? But who would I be if this were already mine? That question shifts everything. It turns your attention inward, where the real transformation takes place. Because once you identify the version of yourself who already has what you desire, your role is not to chase it, but to embody it. This embodiment is subtle. It is not about dramatic changes or pretending for others to see. It is an internal shift in posture, in attitude, in the way you carry yourself mentally and emotionally. The person who already has what you desire thinks differently. They respond differently. They feel differently, not in extremes, but in quiet certainty. If you had already achieved your goal, would you be worried about when it will happen? Would you be doubting your worthiness? Would you be constantly searching for signs? Of course not. You would feel a sense of ease, a calm assurance that everything is as it should be. That is a state you begin to adopt, not later but now. At first it may feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. That is because you are stepping out of an old identity that has been reinforced over time. But discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something is changing. And if you remain with the new state long enough, it begins to feel natural. Becoming this person also changes the way you interpret the world. Situations that once triggered insecurity or doubt no longer hold the same meaning. You are no longer seeing life through the lens of lack. You are seeing it from a place of fulfillment. And from that place, even challenges are perceived differently, not as obstacles, but as temporary movements that do not define your outcome. Your actions will begin to reflect this shift without force. You may notice yourself making decisions with greater clarity, speaking with more confidence, or simply feeling less reactive to things that used to disturb you. These are not things you are trying to do. They are expressions of who you have become internally. It is also important to understand that becoming does not depend on external validation. You are not waiting for the world to confirm your identity. You choose it within yourself first. And as you remain faithful to that identity, the outer world gradually aligns with it. Not all at once, and not always in ways you expect, but consistently. There will be moments when the old self tries to return. Old thoughts, old fears, old habits may surface. When they do, you do not fight them aggressively. You simply recognize that they no longer belong to who you are choosing to be, and you return to your new state, not with effort, but with quiet decision. Over time, this new identity becomes stable. It no longer feels like something you are practicing. It feels like you. And when it feels like you, there is no longer any separation between you and your desire. You are not hoping for it. You are not waiting for it. You are expressing it. This is the shift that changes everything. Not chasing, not forcing, not waiting, but becoming. And once you truly become the person who already has it, the world around you begins to reflect that truth in ways that feel both natural and inevitable.